For over a century, we fought for workplaces where the basic needs of workers were met.
We fought.
We fought.
We fought.
We fought and won the struggle for the rights of women.
Nous avons lutté en faveur de la justice sociale.
We helped bring down apartheid in South Africa.
Addressing climate change is in the economic, social and political interest of everyone. In a world facing environmental disaster and the worst economic crisis in modern times, the call for action to stop global warming is now being echoed by trade unions everywhere. Unions from the north and south are asking governments to commit to a reduction in emissions and to adequately finance climate change adaptation strategies.
We know what the current economy has done to our home.
Hemos vivido la realidad de un modelo de producción que nos ha llevado al colapso.
Nosotros somos los primeros en sufrir las consecuencias.
We have seen what climate change can do to our lives.
Today, I think there is no more pressing, wider contextual issue than protecting the planet. All work in the end depends on natural resources. And we're exhausting natural resources, we have productive processes which are not sustainable. So if trade unions are serious about protecting jobs, they've got to protect the environment at the same time.
The effects of our actions on climate change will be felt for years to come. The heat-trapping gases we send into the atmosphere now will stay there until 2108 and beyond. Each day that goes by, the threat grows. Each day we delay means greater suffering and a higher cost for future generations.
El cambio climático es el mayor riesgo al que nos enfrentamos.
Climate change is the biggest challenge we face, and it is a threat to the society as we know it. It is the most fundamental ethical problem of our age.
Fundamental. Aquellos que van a sufrir las consecuencias del cambio climático.
Those who are most at risk are those who are not able to adapt, and they are the ones less responsible for the problem.
A worldwide average increase of 3 degrees centigrade in our lifetime will result in increased droughts, extreme weather events, tropical storms, and sea level rises in large parts of the world. Small island states and coastal zones will be threatened. In many regions, the effects are already being felt, causing widespread human suffering and in particular the loss of lives, livelihoods and jobs for the poorest communities. More than 2 billion people are directly exposed to the impacts of climate change.
We are the millions who have an opportunity to decide what future we want for our planet. As trade unions, we will rise to the challenge of achieving a sustainable world.
Developed countries must also make sure that developing countries are just as able to cope with this transformation. They must have the technological, economic and social means in order to take part in this universal transformation, without which any and all social progress would become impossible to attain.
Climate policies provide opportunities to restore hope, to create quality jobs that contribute to reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. For unions, major investments are needed in order to develop long-term sustainable industrial policies. Through these policies, decent and green jobs will be preserved and created. Workplaces will become greener, and new green technologies will be developed and deployed on a wider scale.
We believe that public policies are very important. Through them, we can create green jobs. When a government makes excellent public transport a priority, then we will need less cars. Jobs can be created when we make buildings that are environmentally friendly.
The German Alliance for Work and the Environment is an example of how together the fight against climate change can become a successful economic opportunity.
There are already 1.8 million people working in the environmental sector. These are already more then people are working in the whole German automobile industry.
In 1998, German trade unions created a program to renovate existing buildings by energy-saving and efficiency measures like insulation and advanced heating technologies. To make it possible, they created an alliance with the government, environmental NGOs and employers' federations. Everyone has benefited.
The oil consumption will go down with an 80% reduction. The carbon dioxide emission will go down with an 80% reduction. You will feel as well that the heating costs will go down with an 80% reduction.
So far, 300,000 flats have been renovated, creating about 200,000 jobs and an estimated reduction in carbon dioxide emissions of 1 billion tons. The results have been so impressive that the government now wants to triple the size of the program. Green jobs can make a major contribution to clean economic development and poverty reduction. While employment protection has sometimes been given as a reason for not engaging in emission reduction, available data shows that climate change mitigation produces positive net employment effects. A Green Jobs Conference in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the United Steelworkers Union, brings together the key elements for the construction of a new Blue-Green Alliance.
This is where we're going to make it clear that it's not asset bubbles and credit crunches and currency manipulations that will drive this agenda in the future. It's going to be an agenda where we understand that we'll all do better when we all do better at being green.
The environmental agenda of the 21st century is not any longer to clean up after those who have created a mess. Environmentalism in the 21st century is about the jobs in our economies of tomorrow and where our children are going to find a way to make a living on a planet which is rapidly losing its very capacity to sustain us.
In Australia, trade unions are answering the call for change by demanding new opportunities for decent and green jobs.
We need to get over how much is it going to cost, because I think there's a greater cost to the environment if we don't do anything.
The fight against climate change will not only imply new jobs in new sectors. A lot has to be done in order to green existing workplaces and occupations. Since almost 3/4 of global greenhouse gases come from the manufacturing, energy, transport and construction sectors, workplace actions will be crucial in order to drive the changes in these fields.
Well, unions are placed at the core of production, so as such they have a role to play in terms of reforming workplaces and proposing the ways we can gain in efficiency, we can gain the use of resources. If they do not provide an environmental sustainability to their product or to their production, their jobs their jobs are at risk. We need to give a future to those jobs, and the only way is producing something that will last.
In Britain, the Trade Union Congress promotes initiatives to reduce energy consumption in the workplace. They hold Green Open Days, provide training for union environmental representatives, and support negotiations with management. From reducing emissions in the workplace to reducing emissions on the way to work, Spanish unions promote sustainable mobility by providing information on bus schedules, bicycle paths, and carpooling opportunities. They're also advocating for the construction of new metro lines that improve access to industrial sites.
Sustainable transport has to be useful for the society. It has to guarantee the rights of those in need so that those with less options can also have access to public transport in terms of price and availability.
This vision would transform the transport sector, which today accounts for 26% of world energy use and 23% of greenhouse gas emissions. Change is possible if everyone plays a part and makes sure that past mistakes are corrected.
We will promote renewable energy wherever is possible.
We will fight for better building codes that will save energy.
우리는 우리 일터에서 온실가스 배출을 감축하겠습니다.
Let's reduce CO2. Yes, we can.
We'll work for a Green New Deal to stop global warming.
Vamos promover os empregos do futuro.
We can make sure words become action and hope becomes a reality.
The town of Webuye in western Kenya, population 250,000, of which 60% live below the poverty line. In 2008, the main employer in the region, Pan Paper Mill, shut down, and 1,500 forestry workers were unemployed. Now, local affiliates of the Building and Woodworkers Union are encouraging a new beginning, one that includes a wide-ranging forestry program as a solution. The program set up water springs and a comprehensive forestry initiative to provide seedlings, stabilize water resources, support reforestation efforts, and transform the community's outlook in the process.
I happen to be a mathematics teacher, so I did some quick mathematics. If you work out the mathematics, actually find that although it takes 10 years, but what you can get from the tree is much more than an acre of sugarcane or maize and whatever. Any portion of land that I buy is one to plant trees.
32 families in the village have gone from paper mill employees to forestry entrepreneurs, who now share a very different vision of the importance of their environment and its role in the fight against climate change.
I learned with this, you can help develop your country. Besides the economy, we shall have a very purified atmosphere, and therefore it won't be bad.
In Buenos Aires, Argentina, the local building union carries out training for its members aimed at improving the environmental rating of their product, from biogas heaters to solar panels and wind turbines. Training is vital to prepare workers for changes in legislation that promote renewable energy sources. Skill gaps and shortages could slow down the potential greening of the economy.
Las energías renovables son el futuro.
Renewable energy is the future. Education has to be a constant, especially for the workers so they can have a tool to adapt, nourish the skills, and create more job opportunities. One always has to be prepared for change, even if it's a change of 180 degrees.
De 180 grados.
Around the world, trade unions, governments, and business leaders are discussing the need for change. It's time to talk and discuss. Tripartite social dialogue is key.
It is a question of creating a general social conscience. We cannot go on thinking that we are either bosses, workers, or government, because nature is something that affects all of us.
Sector-specific tripartite discussions have been organized in Spain. Their goal is to facilitate the fulfillment of the Kyoto Protocol by providing a better understanding of the effects on employment as well as the best available solutions, sector by sector.
The social dialogue tables for the Kyoto Protocol are a useful tool that allow us to anticipate potential socioeconomic and environmental problems. Nevertheless, we want them to go beyond being information sources and become a stage for social compromise.
We live
in a biophysical space that is finite, a space that can only give so much, and we simply had not taken this into account when we did our sums. What we have now is an accumulated environmental debt that is unsustainable in the medium term. And if that is unsustainable, then it is also financially and economically impossible to develop properly.
It is essential to understand that each community will require locally adapted policies. One size does not fit all. In India, the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, has brought together over 1 million women toiling in the informal sector and is already putting into practice each and every element of a sustainable economy by adapting different measures to different communities.
Poor are the most green because they have to innovate coping strategies day in and day out for their survival from whatever meager resources that are available within their own little surrounding. And therefore, I think they have the best of the strategies for green livelihoods.
One example of SEWA's bottom-up approach to climate change has been the introduction of simple-to-run biogas stoves in rural areas, some of the poorest in India.
Before I had the biogas stove, we had to wake up every morning at 5 and go and collect firewood and not come back till 1 or 1:30 to make food. During that time, the children would go hungry and could not study, and I could not take care of them properly.
The stoves use cow manure to create gas, reducing the rate of deforestation for firewood in central Gujarat. The slurry from the biogas stove is used as an organic fertilizer, and the improvement in cotton yields is a huge bonus for families and the environment. A simple measure providing real solutions to thousands of people. Vulnerability may be a source of reluctance to support change. For trade unions, justice in the transition process is essential. Change must go hand in hand with protection.
If it is in the interest of all of humanity and the entire planet that we change our ways, it is profoundly unfair for the social and economic costs of those changes to be borne by workers in specific industries and people in particular regions.
Just transition is a commitment to working people to say, when you fight for climate change, you're not sacrificing your job. And there's nothing more important, I think, not just for trade unionists and for workers, but for the overall future of environmental protection than to reconcile these two objectives.
The need for a just transition is apparent in the oil fields of central Colombia, where unions have already paid a heavy price in their fight for workers' rights.
In Colombia,
In Colombia, trade union activities is considered to be very risky.
de muy alto riesgo. Son muchísimos los miles de
Thousands of trade union, civic and popular leaders have been murdered.
sociales que viven siendo asesinados.
Despite numerous threats against them, 2 years ago it was the union who fought back against the environmentally damaging exploitation by a foreign oil company of this oil field.
What worries us as a union? Oil has encouraged people to come to this area. From 12,500 people, there are now 30,000 from other parts of the country who arrive with job expectations. But when the oil is finished, what will they live off?
The fight against the oil company led to the inclusion of better environmental practices in the exploitation area and adequate compensation for the communities who occupy the land.
No tenemos una cultura de defensa de la naturaleza.
We are not a culture that defends the environment as in other countries, but I think that we would get there, perhaps not at the same time. But if developing nations provide an example and all those concerned with the environment show us the way and help us in the path towards a greener agenda, then perhaps a country like ours will see the light.
Fighting climate change is not automatically going to produce good employment results. It's not a convenient truth that the two things will happen together. We have to make it happen. We have to adopt policies, we have to get industry, trade unions and governments working together. And this type of cooperation has gone rather out of fashion in the neoliberal agenda of recent decades. We've actually got to look behind us, look to the past, and see how, as I say, governments and social partners have sat down together with a bit of vision, looking beyond the problem of tomorrow to the problems of the day after tomorrow, and work out solutions which are of benefit to all parties.
Trade unions now march in unison with other social movements, such as development and environmental NGOs, in search for coordinated solutions to climate change. It is time to fight together for our very survival.
Modern trade unions have to combine the fight for the rights of the workers with the fight for the construction of a new society. We have to decide what kind of development we want. Do we want economic growth that does not include the future of our planet, our society, animals, water and plant life? So it is vital that trade unions combine their immediate fights with a perspective of the future.
Sustainable development calls for a new democracy. We need a new kind of relationship amongst nations to respond to this transition.
As trade unionists, we will rise to the challenge of creating a sustainable world.
Climate change is everyone's problem.
We can and will be part of the solution.
Unite.
Unas a nós.
Rejoignez-nous.
함께 합시다.
Join us.